Sorry ladies, internet's really bad out here. So I'm having a really hard time trying to stay on. I'm just going to be drying these sides with the heat tool really quick. I'm probably only going to get one dry for this show, but we'll be doing a YouTube video explaining everything that I'm doing. I'm off camera a little bit because the cord does not reach. And I've got limited space out here, so I gotta make do with what I got. Although it's like 100 degrees outside, so I could just stick these outside and they'd dry a lot faster. So, sorry, Ustream's probably going to cut out a few times because the internet's horrible, but when we move into our permanent place closer to the city, I'm sure we'll have much better internet. And this coat will dry semi-glossy, but because it's on chipboard, it's getting soaked up a little bit more than I'd like, so hopefully it'll still crackle. I think it will. So has anybody finished a book with this line yet? This hybrid line? If you just tuned in, we're working on the Cottage Chic mini book. It's a printable mini book kit, and you can get it at MarionSmithDesigns.com. If you just search Cottage Chic, it should pop up. But it's under the shop tab too, so you can find it under mini books. Almost dry. Alright, so this side's pretty dry, so I'm going to start working off that side. Let me grab a new paintbrush. These are, once again, the Claudine Helmuth Studio brushes. Love these brushes. What do you want, Garrett? Can I show him what you're doing? Garrett won't let me show you guys what he's doing. He's making a heart in the window. I think he likes me. Alright, so now I'm getting that ivory white paint. And I'm just going to use the scrap envelopes I've got here. I just need a little bit, and I'm going to brush it on super thin. You don't want to go thick with this. You can go thick, but if you go too thick, you'll get really large cracks. If you go thin, you'll get nice small cracks, which is what I want for the cover because only a little bit is going to show, so I want that little bit to be pretty detailed. So I'm kind of spreading my paint out onto my brush, show you a nice coat on there. And I'm going on the edge. And you want to brush it on really quickly because this paint is going to dry really quick. So see, I'm not being perfect. I'm spreading the paint out and doing a really thin coat. And hopefully this works. I'm kind of nervous because it seeped into the chipboard quite a bit, but oh, it looks like it's already working. Awesome, loving it. So I'm getting those really nice thin cracks, which is exactly what I wanted. I don't know if you guys could really see it on camera. See how quickly that works? So you don't want to hit this with a heat tool. I promise you, if you hit this with a heat tool, you're going to get less crackage. So let it dry on its own and crack so you can get that really nice thin crack. Otherwise, you're not going to get any cracking at all. So, and you can actually put the coat of paint over it while it's still glossy and a little bit wet. So can you see it kind of crackling there a little bit now? Isn't that cool? Alright, so on this one, see, it's still a little bit wet. I'm just going to apply it over it anyway. If you do this, you're going to have to go a little bit thicker on the paint, and you're going to have to go faster because it's sticky, and it's going to start cracking almost instantly. I'm doing a little bit more paint. And I'm trying to put it on here really thin, but because it's wet and gooey, it's coming on fairly heavy. And once you brush it on, you don't want to go brushing over the same spot because you're just going to make it look really nasty otherwise, and it's not going to look quite right. So you can see when you paint it on wet, you get a little bit bigger of cracks. Can you kind of see on there? Isn't that cool? And this one is pretty much dried pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the back side. And I love this crackle paint. I've been using this crackle paint since I was little. And when I say little, I'm talking like 6th grade. They've been around a long time. They've had this crackle medium around a long time. Alright, so there's the back side. I'm going to let it crack on its own. This side's a little bit wet, so I don't want to set it down just yet. But it's almost dried all the way. I am recording, ladies. As far as I know I am, I hope. Oh, I think I am. I think it automatically records now, and then you could save it at the end of the broadcast. So, isn't that cool? I love it. Alright, so I'm going to set this one down to let it dry a little bit on its own, and then I'm going to go ahead and flip this one over. See, this one's got bigger cracks because I did it while that crackle medium was still wet, so you'll get more cracklage if you brush it on while it's wet, which is okay. I mean, my cover is not going to match my back cover because the cracks are going to be different, but I'm okay with that. And I'm not worrying at all about the edges. So see the edges? I like it just like that. So I would not try to cover those edges at all. You know, like the thickness of the chipboard, that's the edge that I'm talking about. I already inked it in brown, so I'm getting a little bit of white on there, and I like it just like that, so I'm going to leave it just like that. Alright, so this is what happens when you brush over it too much, and there's actually a really cool technique if you do it that way. It doesn't crack as much, but it does look really chunky and grunchy, and we'll do that on a later project. So I'm going to set this one aside and let that one dry. And since this one has cracked about as much as it's going to crack, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the heat tool. And the great thing about this crackle paint is it's nice and flat, so there's not a whole lot of texture to it at all. The Tim Holtz crackle paint is really thick, which is really, really cool too, but it takes a little bit longer than I'd like for it to dry. I would actually prefer using that because I like the texture, but because it takes so long to dry, I'm just doing this since I'm trying to get this video done. And once you hit this with the heat tool, it's going to crack a little bit more, but not too much more. Once it's like cracked all the way, it's pretty much done. Okay, so once you've done that, you've got it all nice and cracked, you're going to want to fill this crackle paint with like a matte multi-medium, because if you don't, it's going to flake off. It's paint that dried on a smooth surface, so it's gonna flake off eventually. So I've got some matte multi-medium that I just put in this little squeezy bottle here, and it's a little clogged right now, so I need to find something to pokey it. I need a pokey object. Here we go. I got a little needle because I'm binding the book right now to my samples for CJ. And I wanted to tell you guys, is anyone from Illinois on tonight? Because I'm going to be teaching at the Scrapbooking Studio the weekend of CHA. So I believe it's the 20th and the 21st I'll be teaching. And super, super fun classes. You're not going to want to miss it. There's going to be sneak peeks of my product line there and a lot of techniques. So if you're anywhere near that area, come see me. Or if you're going to CHA, come see me at the Prima booth. I'm going to be demoing at the Prima booth with my new line at CHA, so I'm excited about that. And I'm clogged once more. Hang on. I think I've got it out. Yeah. So all I'm doing is I'm squeezing up a really thin amount. You don't need a lot of this. Just a little tiny bit. A little bit goes a long way. We're just sealing the paint. So now I'm just brushing over with some matte medium. And I'm brushing it as thin as I can get it. I don't want it to be too thick on there. It doesn't really matter if it's real thick, but I want mine to dry pretty quickly, so I'm not brushing it on too thickly. Alright, and matte medium dries pretty fast anyway, so now I'm going to do the inside. Well, this really isn't my new studio. It's just temporary right now. For a while, but I like it. It's a cool little shop. My dad actually, or sorry, my father-in-law, I just call him Dad, but my father-in-law built this room, and it's pretty much like a little house outside, separate from the main house, and so it's kind of cool. And he's letting me use it for my studio. He's a good father-in-law. Alright, so I've coated that with matte multi-medium. I'm going to hit it with a heat tool, let it dry a little bit quicker so it's not too sticky. Alright, so that's pretty dry. Let me just check on you guys really quick. Looks like everything's alright. So now you can, oh, I got a little bit of stickiness I gotta get rid of. So now you can ink this and seal it again if you want to. I'm not going to because well, actually, you know what, I might just a little bit. Let me see what ink I've got available to me right now. Oh, where are those suckers, those daubers? Let me get my little treasure box out here. I'm just getting some distressed stains out if I could find them. Like I said, it's a mess in here because nothing is where it should be. So it looks like I've got vintage photo distress stain, so I'm going to use a little bit of that. And I'm just going to draw along the very edge here. And I'll show you what I'm going to do in a minute. So I'm just getting a little bit on my edge. And the great thing about this matte medium is it can take ink, which is cool. And I'm going to take a clean paintbrush while this ink is still wet, and I'm just brushing it in there. I'm working it into the page a little bit here. And that's just going to give me that nice distressed edge. So it kind of looks like some areas of the paint are a little bit more worn than the others. And like I said, you can ink over matte medium, which is one of my favorite things about matte medium. And I'm sure you guys already know I use matte medium like a mad woman. So I'm just getting a little bit more ink on my brush, and I'm just getting it onto the very edges here. And if you work fast enough, if you get it on a spot that you didn't want to really get it on, you can get it just a little bit wet and still be able to pull it off. But once you let it dry and seep in there, it's in there for good for the most part. So I'm just pulling some of that color out, and you can even use your finger to wipe it off a tad if you need to. Alright, so can you kind of see how I'm getting that inked edge on there? I'm going to go ahead and do the back side. And I'm going to do the same thing I did in the beginning of the other one. I'm going to draw it on there first. And spread it out with my brush and my finger a little bit. I still want it to look white in a lot of parts, so I don't want to get too much on there. So you can see me wiping some off a little bit. Alright, so I've got that edge nice and aged how I want. Can you kind of see it on there? That's good enough for me. And now we're going to play with this drywall tape. This drywall tape is awesome, but keep in mind that it's just barely sticky. It's a lot like that repositionable mesh. So here, I'll show you what I normally use this for. Say you position some flowers or some bling on your page, but you're not ready to glue them down. So I'm just going to use this bling as an example here for a second. So I'm not ready to glue those down yet. I'm going to take this because it's just sticky enough to hold everything in place. And for my mini albums, I just stick it on there just like this. And then now I can put this somewhere, and none of it's going to fall off. And then when I'm finally ready to glue it down on there, I just peel it up. And this just kind of keeps it all in place. So you can just peel it up just like that, and it's not going to ruin your project. So that's normally what I do with it, but I love using it on canvases and mixed media, stuff like this, so I do that too. So let me get this bling off my page now. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut some small strips the same size as your book, like this. And this is drywall tape, you guys. You can get it at Home Depot. It's super cheap. So I'm cutting off enough to cover the whole cover here. Okay. So I'm going to stick it down like this, and then I'm just going to trim it off to where it's a little bit shorter than my actual page. I don't need it that long. And then I'm going to scoot this over because I just need one more little strip. And I'm kind of lining up the grid too, so it looks like I just need about 1/4 of an inch strip left. Alright, so now I've got all my pieces here. I'm going to stick them down on my table for a minute. Or take them off for a minute because I want to get them a little bit dirty. And I'm going to stick it on just this piece of chipboard while I ink it, because I'm going to ink it a little bit and make it nice and dirty. Now for this part, you really want to make sure you use a permanent brown ink. And if you don't have a permanent brown ink, then you can use your matte medium to make a permanent brown ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this scratch piece of paper here and I'm going to make my own. So I'm going to start with some Distress Stain. And I've got a little bit too big of a glob on there, so I'm sucking some of it back up. And I've got some matte medium here that I'm going to squirt a generous amount of on the side there. Grabbing another paintbrush, and I'm just going to mix the matte medium with that stain. Just like this. And this is how I'm making some permanent ink to stain this. So when I get this wet again, it's not going to get gross. So I'm going to do this over this piece of chipboard. And I'm just going to go over my drywall tape, just like this. So we're just staining the drywall tape with the matte medium and the stain. If you have a permanent ink pad like some StazOn, all you would do is just brush it over this tape. Because I want this tape to show on my edges of my cover. So something like this.